You're listening to We All Go Forward, a podcast on self-leadership through setbacks. With ownership, action, and growth, be set back, only to be catapulted forward into a more progressed, truer you.
Hey guys, and welcome back. We are back today with our Breaking Camp Devotional. It's a big moment. It's the first devotional that we do in this season and the podcast all together. I'm excited, I'm nervous, but I know it's going to be helpful. It means a lot to me, and I believe that sharing this will not be in vain. This devotional is connected to episode 16, in which I talk about this big mistake that I make, and then I'm fixated on this mistake, and I'm fixated on trying to get back to what I was pursuing, what life was like, what even my relationship with God felt like before this huge mistake. And it's because, yes, the mistake is bad, but it's really just because it's rooted around and connected to this huge rejection. The way I felt, I thought if there is a good God of any sort, he'd never want me to feel that way. And I said to God, in all of that, show me someone stuck, show me someone in need of moving on and moving forward. And it was at that moment that he gave me Deuteronomy 1, verses 6 through 7, which reads, "When we were at Mount Sinai, the Lord our God said to us, 'You have stayed at this mountain long enough. It is time to break camp and move on.'" What I did not know in that moment is that this would be something I'd be tasked, with to share with other people. And so what I didn't say in the last episode, because it wasn't necessary, but I'll include here, is that a year after this Deuteronomy moment, something else happens, which we'll touch on in this episode. And I'm reminded of a second character, a second scripture, a second, story in the Bible. And as I'm, reading and looking at this story all over again, is there that I start to see all these connections to Deuteronomy 1. And I realize, okay, this is a devotional. I should probably write this down. And this is why we're here. So I'll be dead up honest with you guys that I've been recording this devotional for longer than I should have been, and trying to make it one cohesive devotional, the longer I tried, the harder it became. And so I just was like, we're going to chop this bad boy up. We're going to just kind of do it like series parts. And I like that. It feels lighter for me. And I would say that today's part is really good for anyone who feels guilt around struggling to move forward. This one's for you. So take a listen. All right. If I had one foundational statement to start this podcast, it would be this: that in God, in life, and in time, there is no going back. And I know that particularly when we make mistakes or when things are hard, when we say back, what we really want is an undoing, is an erasure of what has gone on that we don't prefer. But there is no going back. That's not all bad news, though, because gratefully, there is redemption. In God, in life, and time, there's no back, but there may be redirection. We may recoil. And this is where, we get a lot of that imagery for this podcast, that being set back, you're pulled back like a catapult, like a slingshot, only to be released when you're prepared, when you're set in the right position to be released to take off in this amazing forward trajectory. But we can't go back. God never asks people to go backwards. Never. You can try again. And with our decisions, again, our mistakes and the consequences from them that hold us back, he may take us on a detour to learn a lesson. But one thing that God is always going to have us do is work forward. If you think about it, guys, God has us work forward through all types of stuff, through pain, through grief, through change, through the biggest L's, that we would ever take in life. He's like, let's go through this. Let's go forward. It's always forward. But the tension comes in that if we're not going back And if we're not yet in this ideal place, right? Not a destination, not perfection, but just progress, just the next ideal place, then we're in between. And moving through that in between is extremely hard. So let's talk about like this second scripture moment that happens a year from, this Deuteronomy epiphany. So as I said in the last episode, Deuteronomy 1 moment, Breaking Camp happens in 2024. This next situation happens in 2025. And what happened in 2025 is that I had to make this hard decision. I had to break again. But this time I was not breaking away from a mistake, but I was breaking away from a position, and it was hard. Yet I had literally never felt so confident that I was making a right decision. I felt pretty clear that God was, in his wisdom, was asking me to do this, and I needed to do it, and it would be good for me. I just wasn't clear on how sucky it would feel, y'all. I kid you not. And surprise, surprise, therapy was the only place that I felt safe enough to say out loud that I thought that making a decision was the hard part. But actually, everything that came afterwards has felt like a fight. Every day afterwards has been a fight to stay committed to my decision to break. And I never thought she could say something in a moment that could actually make me feel better. Sure, she could say something superficial, but she said something to me that I don't expect. She said to me that, you're like Jacob. You have struggled with God, you have struggled with man, and you have overcome. And I truly cannot undermine how much that scripture means to me in that moment, because she normalizes that it doesn't matter that you struggle. What matters is that you win and that you overcome. Genesis 32 verse 20 by itself might seem a little weird, but I think it's a really great verse that captures Jacob circling his mistakes like I was doing. It reads, "And be sure to say, your servant Jacob is coming behind us, for he thought, I will pacify him with these gifts I am sending on ahead. Later when I see him, perhaps he will receive me." So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. And again, I think that this is a phenomenal verse, and we'll talk a lot about Jacob's story in future parts. But essentially, I wanted to share that before Jacob was even born, God had already told his mother who he'd be. He told her promises over Jacob's life. Yet, after following her lead, Jacob participates in this plan of deceit to get a promise that was and would have been his anyway, again, for reasons I'll explain in future parts of this devotional. And I think that Jacob becomes convinced by his mom that he must perform his way into love and perform his way into a blessing. Feels very familiar. And this blessing just so happens to should have gone or belonged to his brother first. And so his brother Esau hates him and even plans to kill him. So Jacob runs away. And in the process, he endures a lot of deceit and hardship himself. And when he's finally brave enough to make his way back to his promise, he knows he's going to see his brother, who they were not on great terms. And so he defaults to what he knows: performance for love. This is what we're seeing in this verse of Jacob speaking to his servants and telling them to go ahead of them with gifts to give to his brother for hopes that it pacifies him. And Jacob's thinking that the gifts should go ahead of him, when truly God goes ahead of him. God goes ahead of us. And so Jacob spends the night in the camp, which means he's not where he was and he's not yet where he should be, but he's in this in-between place, and he meets God. And left alone with no possessions that can define him, no family even that can define him, just him, because Jacob has sent ahead his wife, he's sent ahead his wives, he's sent ahead his children, he's sent ahead all of his possessions. Is just him. Here by himself, Jacob wrestles with God all night in the camp. And verse 26 through 28 reads for us that when he's wrestling with God, and sometimes it says the man, and sometimes it says the angel, but we know it's God. When he's wrestling with God, it says, then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. And I got so much from my reading, on my personal time. I went back and read about Jacob in that moment, seeing how his perseverance with God, it results in this blessing, and this, which is a transformation of his identity and a renaming to Israel. All the dominoes fell into place between Genesis and Deuteronomy. And so I'm very excited that this first point starts with Jacob. As I read about the Israelites and them trying to break camp to enter their promise, it hit me when I read about Jacob that about 400 years before they had broke camp to enter their promise, Jacob had broke camp too, to enter the very promised land that they were entering. And what's crazy is that they're both dealing with, you guessed it, mistakes, huge mistakes. They're both camped in this wilderness place, which we'll talk about, this in-between place. And they're both being led now to break from both their mistakes as well as their current position, all with the goal to get them to this promise. And if you've been listening up till now, I'm telling you, it's not a coincidence. If Jacob doesn't break camp, if Jacob doesn't break free from his mistakes, and if he doesn't walk into his promise and become Israel, then there are no Israelites to exist that can later do the same. And of course, again, because you never know, listen, some Bible scholars be listening and they want to dissect everything people be saying. Of course, Jacob has 11 of his sons at this time when he breaks camp and when he has this moment, this struggle, and one is on the way. But I must believe that Jacob has to become someone in order for his sons to become someone. For the sons to go on to go become a people named by God, called by God, led by God, he has to do this. He has to become a person through which this blessing can occur. And so essentially we could boil it down to, for Israel, the people, to break camp, Israel, the person, must break camp. For Israel to break camp, Israel must break camp. And here's the connecting thought. Last episode, I speak about how mistakes can produce mistakes, but yet at the same time, the power and the ability to break up from our mistakes and move forward is a skill that produces more power and ability to continue to break camp. Well, just like Jacob, I thought that Kim in 2025 cannot break camp if Kim in 2024 does not do the same. I want y'all to really hear this, because I thought about the fact that the breaking from my mistakes, that part allowed for a mindset shift in me that allowed me to later, I didn't see it as a connection. I'm trying to tell you, not until recently, I saw that I can't do what I did in 2025 if I don't do what I did in 2024. I literally will not be in the right mindset. I would not have the right perspective of self to be brave enough to have the courage to break from my position in 2025 if God doesn't call me to break from the mindsets and the things that are not serving me in 2024. And so I think for you, I want to say to you right now, if you're listening, that if God is calling you to break up with a mistake, do it. Because the next break that he'll require of you depends on it. And I think we're all learning in real time actively that it's not only mistakes that don't define us. Our positions in life don't define us either. That does not mean that they're not good. That does not mean that they're not useful. But what it does mean is that when God, who we're proclaiming we want to be the orchestrator of our lives, tells us that it's time to break, it takes a certain mindset shift. It takes obedience. And most of all, thank God for this, it takes and requires a blessing. It's not lost on him that we don't yet have the identity and the character, the transformation to not struggle. But as long as we're in the business of persevering with him, he's in the business of giving us the blessing that's required to overcome. I'll seal the deal with James 1, verse 12, which says, God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Endure translating to mean persevering. Testing and temptation, that translate to mean adversity, trials, setbacks, struggles, wrestling. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. Thanks, guys. Whew. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and that is only part 1. There are so many other gems to come, so go on and hop on over to part 2. Also, if you're a part of this tribe and you're like, I'm a person who pushes things forward too, I make things go forward, I got to think of a good name for us. Anyway, then I need you to share this with someone who's in need of this message. Whatever you do, remember that as we move in the right direction, that is forward and progressing, never stagnant, we become a resource for others to do the same. And the cycle continues, but only if we move. So if you go and I go, we all go forward. Let's get moving.